Happy Thursday. Welcome to SJU. Spencer GIlbert has his coffee. Joe Starr has Sarah. Danielle has her magical, beautiful self and also a beverage. And I have me and this headset, which I remembered to plug in today. So we're off to a very good start here on SJU. Plus, we're going to talk about Trolls World Tour and whether or not it is changing the face of this industry forever. Bum, 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 bum. Plus, Joe Starr fanfic. He's actually going to read fanfic that he wrote, real Joe stuff, but you have to stay till the end of the show to get the big reveal. Hint, Spencer's involved. Okay,
Oh,
let's get
God.
into it. Oh, God. Indeed. The troll heard round the world. I just want to pause for a moment and say whoever is headlining these segments, you have my sword.
All Ryan.
Is it Ryan?
It's all Ryan.
I know his
Good job, kiddo. Love that. Hand for Ryan. All right, this is via Deadline and Variety. I think you guys probably have heard a little bit about this hubbub. Basically, Trolls was released at home due to the shutdown in theaters around coronavirus, and then they touted making $100 million and said basically, wow, maybe we would go day and date in the future because this was so successful for us. This was in an article in the Wall Street Journal. AMC came out and was like, what? We're not going to run any Universal movies then in our theaters. And now it is heating up even further. So let's dig into the details just a little bit. AMC boss Adam Aron said to Universal's chairman, Donna Langley, in response to the NBC Universal CEO Jeff Shell's statement in the Wall Street Journal, which I just mentioned, around the success of Trolls World 2, that they would not be running their theaters. Aaron explains to Langley in the letter that he initially thought it was that theaters were closed and the decision to take Trolls World Tour into homes was an exception. It would not become the rule. But Shell's words in the Wall Street Journal had them startled. And I think that that's understandable. Here's the quote. The results for Trolls World Tour have exceeded our expectations and demonstrated the viability of PVOD, which is going straight to VOD at home. As soon as theaters reopen, we expect to release movies on both formats. What? The context is that Universal's reporting that, again, it made $100 million. So it was also other movies that went home were The Invisible Man, The Hunt, and Emma. And so I think we don't know actually the returns, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ryan, of those individually, but we believe that The Invisible Man was the one that made the bulk of the dollars. The Hunt had not done well in theaters in its small window to open, and Emma, of course, is a smaller kind of indie film. Which, by the way, shame on everyone. The Hunt's great. You should totally watch it. It's completely entertaining. It's family friendly.
The Hunt is really good. Gilpin is
is not family friendly. It's not. But sorry, say it again. Who worship at the altar of?
Betty
Liberty
Gilpin.
Bell.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome.
She's amazing. And she needs a much bigger career, which I believe she will have after this. Anyway, so Aaron said going forward, AMC will not license any Universal movies in our 1,000 theaters globally on these terms. So it's basically, we've seen theaters and studios go head to head on this before in terms of the reduction in time between when something is released in a theater and when it goes home. That's been a tension point for a lot of years. And of course, coronavirus has escalated that. That said, if you really look at the success of Trolls, it's not so black and white. We've talked about this before, where you cannot sort of equate what might have been a mid-range success in theaters to something that is a blockbuster in theaters. You just can't get those same kind of dollars because you don't have the multiple revenue streams. In other words, if Wonder Woman 1984 comes to theaters and it opens globally theatrically and makes $1 billion, and then it goes home and makes another $350 million in VOD, you've just cut off that first revenue stream. So that's even looking at the split. So for VOD, the studios get a larger percentage of those dollars. I think it's 80% versus 50-50, roughly, depending on the territory with theaters. Even with that in mind, if you cut off the theatrical experience altogether, you reduce the potential revenue, particularly for a blockbuster film. But what we could be looking at down the line is lower film, like films like Emma, going home, and
Mhm.
either day and date, a limited theatrical release, day and date, and at home, or straight to the service of the studio that created it plus VOD, which is like $20. I think that you get to rent it, right? Roughly, it's like you pay 20
Mhm.
bucks and you rent it for 48 hours.
It was smaller for these for the lower films like Emma, like the lower tier stuff. I don't remember it being $20. I think it was like 8 or 10.
Mm.
But I think Trolls was 20 because it was like they were sort of experimenting with this like it's premium.
Plus, also they had The Hunt and Invisible Man had the opportunity, a small opportunity, to be in theaters first. Anyway, that was a lot of setup in order for Spencer to tell us how the industry is going to look in 2 years.
2 years.
This is definitive.
I think it'll be largely the same in 2 years, maybe 10 years from now. I mean, look, big picture, sadly, with great sadness in my heart, I do think that movie theaters are going the way of theaters in that they are, there's going to be one per city. They'll be very large and full of old people, and that's it. And there'll be one movie or play a year in them. But I do think that there's some studio executive, riding a bird scooter around their mansion right now with a Bluetooth earpiece in his head, who's just like, let's just put Wonder Woman out. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Because you got to figure it's so tempting. Like you said, they keep all of the money or a much bigger portion of the money than they do when they release a movie in theaters. So they could technically gross less, but make just as much, if not more. So I got to wonder, like, what's the price cap that people would be willing to pay for these blockbuster movies to get them day and date at home? Like, would you pay $50 to see Wonder Woman the day it comes out? People spend $100 to watch Jake Paul fight some other guy on Twitch. Like, I think that this could be the beginning of the end.
It is such an interesting question, and we've gone back and forth on that. It's a massive decision because even you would have to make at home, you would have to make, in order to say Wonder Woman was going to make $1 billion. I don't know that it is, but just say that it is. So they take home $500 million. So if you look at the 80-20 ratio, you still have to make like $750 million in the PVOD experience. And then plus you don't have the second window of a VOD experience. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if it, like you said, it could be rentals. You could get it for a weekend for $49.99, and then it disappears, and then you buy it again later when it comes out cheaper.
I think Trolls coming out, and again, I wish so much that it was Troll 2 and not Trolls 2 that was doing this. So I think there's a couple of factors at play, or if any of that is accurate, or if any of that can actually work. This is the first movie that's done this. This is like there's a specialness and a sheen to that, where it's like this is the first movie that had to skip theatrical entirely, of its size and of its type, like a big family, children are desperate kind of film. Invisible Man, like you said, Roth, was doing pretty well in the theater and already had a rep, so it was kind of like, oh, cool, now it's on VOD. It's also hasn't quite made money yet. Like the headline is, oh God, it made $100 million. It's a hit. It's still about 50 million off from being profitable. So if there's a steep drop, in that window, I think sort of all this is for naught. I do agree with you on the bird scooter thing, Spencer, and that weird statement about, I think we're going to start releasing on both windows, feels like a quote from a bird scooter executive going rogue, and just really being like, this is my time to push.
Hey, by the way, I think that we should give everybody a little bit of leeway to be kind of crazy right now, because bird scooter executives included, this is a crazy time and people are just like, I don't know, let's do it all the time, especially a studio like Universal. That said, Danielle, let's also take this from the perspective of the theaters. Right. To your point, it hasn't 100% been profitable yet, Joe, but it wouldn't necessarily have been profitable in theaters either. It is a special case scenario because in the future, it's going to be competing with movies that are in theaters and other movies that are at home. It's not going to be the only game in town. Right.
Forbes had a really good quote about that that I'm just going to ape because I thought it was really good. Because if you look at like Secret Lives of Pets 2 and like the similar drops at these like mid to low range family films have had. Like the Forbes quote that I loved was, this Trolls 2 move worked best for Trolls 2, not necessarily as like an indicator of where the industry's going, because it was a safe bet that in the theaters it was not going to do wonderfully.
Well, we've picked apart the studio Bird Scooter, but I think we should probably talk about the Segway riding AMC executive, because Danielle, they're a little bit shooting themselves in the foot. Like, to threaten to band together, to threaten to not run Universal films that include franchises like The Fast and the Furious and Jurassic, seems incredibly self-defeating to me, because they're in a exceedingly vulnerable position right now. That they probably are looking for good partners right now because they're in such a vulnerable position, and because they want theaters to be able to come back and their people to come back and make money. So that I would be pissed too if I was AMC right now. That said, like, it's a crazy empty threat. They are not going to not run Fast and the Furious.
They are absolutely not going to not do this. They are. It feels like it's definitely lashing out. It's like, my boyfriend's cheating on me, so I'm going to say, well, screw you, that I'm like done with you. And we have to remember, theaters have been working very hard for at least the last decade to make sure that people are comfortable in the theater experience, because it's already been that a lot of people have these great ways to watch movies at home. We have huge TVs, we have great sound systems. It's a lot easier to pay $20 for Trolls 2 if, that means that you're not paying, $10 for every kid that you have in, that you can go watch it. So theaters have been trying to find all kinds of ways to get people in there. They've got the new fancy seats. You can get booze at your table. They've got, fancy popcorn, and you can get salmon. You can get people who are coming to your tables, and you can get theater salmon. I don't recommend it, but it is. But it is.
How is it prepared? Like, is it just what?
I assume cedar plank.
It's in a big cup. Yeah. Big cup with a straw.
They just squirt the butter sauce on it.
Yeah, you grab it just like you do the popcorn, and you just scoop in the salmon pieces. But no, God. Theaters have been trying for a really long time to get people to see the theater as being an experience. And especially with AMC, you do all of this where you say, hey, we're going to have booze, we're going to have bars, you can stake your stuff in. And some theaters, they have servers that come by, and you don't even have to leave your seat. Eventually, they're just going to like hook up a catheter so you don't have to leave to go pee. Like, they're doing all of these things to keep people in there. And then on top of that, AMC was like, oh, well, you guys want however many movies a month, we're going to give you however many movies a month. This feels like an executive saying, what more do you want from us? We have done everything. Is it more salmon? Like, they're trying to figure out what they need to do to keep us in theaters.
I think it's salmon.
No. I would pay to not have salmon.
Is it just like poke instead of popcorn?
Poke's fine. That doesn't smell.
Yeah.
Question for you guys. One of the things that people have been tweeting us about, and I've been thinking about, we talked about, is like, is it that they remember when they did in a couple of theaters where they did like the full immersion experience where like your
4D.
They would blast you with compressed air when there was wind and stuff
like that.
Yeah,
some server comes and like licks you on the neck if someone's making out. Like
that is a special theater that you and Pee Wee Herman were in, madam. But we're talking about the other kind. And that, I do wonder if they start to invest in special, like to your point, Spencer, like it's a very premium, like AR, VR experience where it's really, really it's weirdly reduces the communal aspect because it becomes more singular about the individual experience.
I don't know. I just think that, to me, the analogy is theaters, is live theater, that movies are going to become rarer, more expensive, and more plush. That's just the future that we're looking at, because no matter what you do to a theater, more people are going to have options to watch things at home, no matter what, whether it's movies or whether it's YouTube or whether it's any of the 19 streaming services or video games or just scrolling through Instagram, trying not to think about their own life. Movies have more and more competition than they used to. And it's just, there's no turn. Movie theaters, they're the British Empire. This is managed decline is the best they can hope for.
Yeah. Well, I think what's happening is we've talked about this for a long time on this show. I think all this means is maybe it's a little more accelerated, but this just is the continued build to, you're going to have a Marvel movie once a month, and like a fast movie once a month, because just like AMC, we're saying there's no way AMC is not going to show Universal stuff. There's no way Universal is going to withhold their like top tier franchises from the theatrical runs, because there's no evidence, to your point earlier, Roth, about Wonder Woman, that says that they'll do well. Trolls making $100 million doesn't mean, like you said, like a $450 million movie is going to succeed. I think what'll add fuel to the fire is that Warner Brothers is going to do the same thing with Scoob. And I think Scoob will probably do a little better than Trolls 2, because it has like a little more name value, and also kids are going to be even more like insane by the time it comes out. So I think that'll add a little more fuel to this fire. But I think the real test is going to be the first time a Marvel movie tries to do it or something like that.
That's exactly it. We have to remember that these are movies for kids right now that would have done okay, but everyone is at home and everyone is like, how do I not talk to my kids? Like, how do I have to work, I have to put them in front of something, like, how do I deal with my children? And so I think that we can't compare a Trolls 2 during a time when everyone is in one place trying desperately not to murder each other with a blockbuster when we're all out of the house in a year. I just don't. I think that that's a weird comparison, and I think that I think a lot of people are talking a lot of stuff right now, but which it is all very quick, and I think a lot of people maybe should have had a meeting or thought about it before they were making statements. But we can't compare a Marvel movie in a year in a theater outside of the house to Trolls 2 now. But yeah, no, it's just like, when TV got big and theaters were like, oh, we have to do smell-o-vision now. They're going to keep throwing stuff at the wall, and it might be a slower, like salmon. It might be a slower decline. I do agree with Spencer that it's going to happen, but I think that this idea that we can compare Scoob or Trolls 2, which are essentially being used to probably babysit a bunch of kids at once, to a huge Marvel movie or Fast and the Furious, I think that's a mistake.
I mean, the big question I think that remains, there's a number of questions that remain, but one of them is in terms of phase 1, 2, 3 of not the MCU, but of the we're back into the world CU, we really don't know what social distancing is going to look like in 6 months, right? Like, we really don't know if yes, you can go to a theater, but they have to reduce capacity by 50% because you need to have 3 seats in between everybody, and we're still wearing masks. We don't know.
At the very least, it's men urinal rules, universal everywhere.
Yeah. Well, right? So on planes, on certain airlines right now, there was a story the other day. One airline was fully packed. I think it was from New York to North Carolina, and the passengers were not happy about this. And JetBlue says you're going to have to mandatory wear a mask and things like that. We really don't know what this looks like over the next 6 months, which may also impact what the theatrical experience is like. Because on the one hand, if you have to reduce capacity in a theater, they're not going to be making as much money naturally. And two, I think people, if you're sitting in a theater under those restrictions, it changes the experience. Perhaps you are less inclined to go to the theater feeling that lack of safety, right? It's one of the reasons where even after shootings and things like that, they haven't had metal detectors in theaters, because they don't want you to feel afraid going, right? So I know those are two disparate circumstances, 100%, but all I'm saying is just psychologically, if I was sitting there in a mask, I might not enjoy myself as much.
It's hard to eat the popcorn and the salmon in the mask, for one thing.
Yeah.
The salmon, because it's pureed.
I think we could probably rig up some kind of over-the-ear feed bag that could be it hooks behind the ears, and then the food is held right here, and then you
now you guys are doing. Did you guys see?
So it's just dual purpose.
Hannity know how to eat a hot dog?
Oh God, yeah.
Hannity demonstrated how you eat hot dogs at a baseball park with a mask on, and it's great. He's a grown man.
Well,
I think
that's a stretch show. You said man.
There's an interesting apples to apples, I think, where it's also what's the product for? And I think a family who's going to take 3 or 4 kids to go see the new Scooby-Doo movie or a Trolls movie, having the flip side option to maybe just like order them a pizza and rent it is great, because they're not necessarily going to the theater for like an experience. Whereas someone who wants to go see like Tenet with their friends is still going to look for that theatrical experience. Like the VOD at home isn't going to be quite as nice for like a date night or a cool outing to go see Thor 2 Dark World with my bros for the 4th time, or whatever.
As we all did.
Yep.
Yeah. We are going to, Joe, I thought we lost Joe again, but he's here. All right.
I'm very...
So we are going to talk about devs. We are going to reveal our fan fiction, our individual fan fiction from the past to you. But first, I just want to remind everybody that this afternoon, PST, 5:30 p.m. PST, that's Pacific Coast time. That's not what that stands for, but the point is Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We are going to have We Are Not Worthy, Peter Gould, the co-creator of Better Call Saul, one of the greatest shows on television. I am not exaggerating, ladies and gentlemen. It is incredible. He's an incredible writer and creator, and we are honored to have him join us for our video AMA series, Hey Fandom, today at 5:30. There is a link in the description below where you can go ahead and sign up. You can join. You can watch if you like. If you just want to watch, if you're feeling shy, you can ask your own question on video and talk directly to him. You can submit a text question so that you get your question in, but you don't have to go on video if you don't want to. All of these options are available to you. It's really fun. Eric Goldman is going to moderate, and he's legitimately one of the best moderators I've ever seen of events like this. So it's going to be a blast for everybody to either watch or participate in. I highly encourage you to take 45 minutes of your life to experience joy today. And it's all in the service of a great cause. It's all in the service of direct relief, which we've been talking about, which is supporting the very people that are keeping us alive right now. No exaggeration. There's also a link in the description if you would like to share and support around direct relief. Okay. We're going to be talking more about the theatrical experience in years to come. So I didn't want to end that conversation. I just know it'll go on. If you guys have final thoughts, that's good. My final thought is a correction for Spencer, which is he said that Instagram is a tool to have you think about your life less. Wrong. It gets you depressed because it has you think about your life more. Any other final thoughts?
I'm not on the gram. I don't know. Talk.
I just follow thick Instagram models, and it just makes everything go away.
Oh, nice. Okay. Pro tip. Good. No, good. Then let's move on. We're going to do devs talk. But first, I really didn't want to deprive. Oh, you want to do it now? We'll do it now. Should we do that now or fan fiction?
You're
I think we should do fan
I
fiction
am?
first, actually, if we have a choice personally. But
Ryan's the boss. He's telling me what to do. We're going to go with him. I kind of agree with that, Ryan, which is I agree because I don't want the people to be deprived of any ounce of what Joe Starr has brought for us today. So first, we're going to go round robin and say, what is the first fan fiction that we wrote in our lives? Because don't lie to me, everybody did it. Thundercats. It was 200%, and it was not even like I loved Thundercats, obviously because it's amazing, but two, it was a friend of mine that I made at camp. She wrote letters back and forth with a friend of hers back at home, Neely, and she wrote Thundercats fanfic. It was incredibly elaborate and well thought out, and I just kind of boarded that train and I wrote Thundercats fanfiction with her. So that's my first experience of what that even
I very
was.
much want to see that.
She was like my older friend. Like I was younger than her by a couple of years. So she was like guiding me in the ways of nerddom at that time. And she was like an incredible lifesaver. That camp experience was a 200% nightmare except for her. So thank you, Neely, and thank you, Thundercats. You kept me sane for one summer, 3 weeks that felt like 10 years when I was a little one. God, that sucked. It was so bad. Oh, it was awful. It was so awful.
Being outside sounds terrible.
But thank God for Thundercats. Anyway.
I think we're going to have to do a bad camp stories episode.
Yeah.
Oh,
I loved camp.
I loved camp too, not that camp.
Okay.
My mom went to camp with me every time I went to camp.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's rough.
That's so rough.
Every time we had a school field trip, my mom went with me. I have a lot of field trips about her discovering a lot of stuff about my friends. Ooh.
It was like we won't get too far down the rabbit hole, but the 2-sentence description of only part of the nightmare that was those 3 weeks, it was truly horrifically bad. But like I got animals as a result of it. Like I got a bunch of cats. So as to
I thought you meant you found animals at camp and brought them
soothe
home.
me. No. But only one small part of it was just that like I was used to going to kind of like rough and tumble camp, and this camp was not that at all. It was like a rich person's camp. And so I came with like my brother's hand-me-downs and stuff like that. And the other girls were in like Gap and like Couture, and I did not fit in, and they were not nice about it at all. And
You
Neely
went
was
to
the
camp
only
with paint on your jeans. Oh,
Oh no.
Okay, anyway, doesn't matter. Thundercats. It was great. That part was awesome. Thundercats saved me that summer. Thundercats fanfic. So Spencer,
Yes.
what was your fanfic?
open real time.
I never did fanfic, so I'm sorry to burst your bubble. I had an original universe of cartoons and superheroes that were created from my own mind's eye that still exist somewhere. But I think the things I was into was like Looney Tunes and Nicktoons and stuff like that. Like, I don't think Ren and Stimpy and like Bugs Bunny really lend themselves to fanfic. So I was not so much into that, but I have plenty of original. Yeah, I have plenty of original characters, concepts. There's Captain Blasto. There's the Adventure Pig. These are all things I could pull out given enough time.
Wait, okay. So by next week, adult Spencer will make up for his childhood failing and write us some Captain Blasto fanfic. Yeah? Good.
Well, it already. I'll just show you the comics that I made in like 2nd grade. I'll pull them out of storage.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
need more. I need Adventure Pig.
Yeah, Adventure Pig's pretty solid.
Well, okay, so if you're talking about original work, mine was Angie's Adventures. It was about a Pegasus and a unicorn. It's a whole thing. Danielle.
I'm sorry, I was listening to Angie's Adventures. No, so my fanfic was all X-Men because I was obsessed with X-Men. So I would get these composition books and I would trace like panels from X-Men comics that I like. And I had like really fancy colored pencils. And so I would trace it into the composition books. And then I would like use different panels that I liked to make my own story. But of course,
Greg Land.
Oh, it was I created an original character. It was such a Mary Sue. Let me tell you how much of a Mary Sue this character was.
I hate that term.
No, it was though. It was an author insert. It was just me, but with my eyes were pink diamonds.
Yes.
My hair was pink. And
yes.
I could have every mutant power of every mutant I ever came across. It wasn't
Dude, I like her.
It was the worst. And her name was Masquerade. And I think that my parents still have the composition books. There are like 100 of them that I filled with like this terrible nonsense. And I know that my mom kept them all because, as Roth said before we started the call, she does love me and every very stupid thing I do. So I know she still has them back in Washington somewhere.
She even went to camp with you, which is a thing I think we need to unpack a little bit more.
Yep. We will do that on a future episode.
Very good.
Was that like you're in high school summer camp?
So it would be like, I didn't do summer camps. We would do like these overnight camps, but also when I was in high school and my choir would go on trips and I had like my choir was all the bad kids, but all the bad kids had the best voices. So we would go on these trips and my mom would be like, 'cause she was a workaholic. So she would be like, oh, I'll take days off and this will be how we spend time together. And I'm like, my classmates are doing drugs. Please don't come. But then
high school choir trip's supposed to be a horny trip.
That's super.
Yeah.
I've seen those movies.
A horny trip. No.
So did you sneak out to get the drugs done, or how did you get the drugs done?
Oh, we snuck out.
We'll come back.
No. I have a huge story. Yeah. There was a lot of sneaking, and then someone got. Yeah.
Well, in today's episode, Joe Starr is.
Wait, I have a funny story. Remind me to tell the funny story about band camp. This one time at band camp.
We'll do that episode too.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have to remember, Ryan. That's on you. Make us remember. Okay, Joe Starr is the Starr student pupil today because he actually brought show and tell. Would you like to tell us about your fanfic?
I did. So I didn't realize this was fanfic until I looked at it and I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is definitely fanfic. But in second grade, we had a program called Young Writers, and I wrote a book called The Nintendo Warriors. Look at that. There's a Nintendo. Look at that Nintendo I illustrated. I thought I would read it to you.
Oh, good.
Please do.
It's written on tablet paper. You guys remember tablet paper?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's only like 6 pages of very giant font. It's dedicated to my brother Brian.
Oh, sweet.
There's what I guess is the main character. I drew him too. His head is his head's pretty janked up.
Is he wearing, what's on his shoulder?
It's a cell phone.
Is it a cell? Is that just giant? What is it?
I think just General Machines.
Oh, cool.
I'm a pretty big Rob Liefeld fan, so there's just a lot of pouches and places. Steven was a young man from Nintendo Land. He was very different from the other people who lived there. He wore so much equipment that he weighed 400 pounds. I guess that's why he looks so huge. One day, the princess told him that he would do battle with his worst enemies, Ganon, Koopa, because I misspelled it, and Fry Guy, who...
Was that Koopa?
Editor's note, Fry Guy, much lower tier than Ganon and Koopa, so it really... I must have had a Fry Guy thing. Steven fought a hard battle using the power to move, I don't know what that is, and the power glove to win the battle. Ooh. At the age of 100, Steven died.
This sounds like a dance-off to me. He had the power to move.
He had the power
That feels like a dance-off.
This sounds like the Bible to me.
Also, there's that.
He lived 100 years. He begat the power glove.
At the age of 100, Steven died, but his spirit traveled throughout the land. Soon, Steven's son Tommy grew up, and like his father, he went to war. This is the saddest story ever written.
Oh my God, Joe.
I swear this is the Old Testament.
This time the bad guys were stronger before, but Tommy blew them to smithereens with a bomb. He was crowned king of Nintendo Land. When Tommy died...
That escalated really quickly.
Who begat Lamech? Who begat Isaac? Who begat Job?
When Tommy died, his son Harry invented a game that he named Game Boy. He was not strong enough to beat Koopa's army when they invaded Nintendo Land again. Years later,
because of
Harry's
the Game
son,
Boy? Wait.
Harry's son, Gerbal. Yes, questions.
Sorry, just confirming that the Game Boy gave him his power.
He invented the Game Boy,
and the Game Boy. I'm not gonna lie. The Game Boy doesn't come back.
Okay.
Oh, those are unrelated thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, just a lot of editors note throughout this. Like, I really like, hey, where's the story arc go? That kind of thing. It's more of an outline, I think, than a fleshed out story.
It's sequel bait.
It's the beginning of a sweeping epic. This is his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the Game Boy comes back in book 3.
Well, let's get back to Harry's son, Gerbal, who really went out. He really split off from the naming conventions. Gerball, Gerbal, or maybe Gerbal. Gerbal was determined to win their freedom back, and the book's falling apart. Oh God, it's like I stole the Constitution, and we only have so much time to read it before the paper falls apart. Gerbal sent an army of Nintendo warriors to overcome the bad guys. The bad guys were destroyed. For 40 years, there was peace in the land.
I need to love it songs. Like, when do we get to the singing?
Then Bowser, Koopa's son, and Flyer, his nephew, built up the bad guy army again. Bullet Bill came to join them. Meanwhile, Bullet Bill, man. Yeah. Meanwhile, in Nintendo Land, a strange egg came from space and hatched. Out popped a little man in a green suit, who I think is Mega Man.
Oh.
I think that's Mega Man.
I thought we were going to get a Yoshi cameo, but no.
No, this is like Kermit the Frog.
This is a couple years before Super Mario World.
Okay.
He does look like a little Kermity. By the next day, he had grown 10 times his size and could lift 2 elephants in each hand.
Yes.
The bad guys were scared of him. After years of battle, this alien single-handedly wiped out the entire bad guy army. But like after years. So like, was he really that strong? I don't know. From far away, the constant buzz of an alarm clock could be heard. 8-year-old Kevin slowly woke up and stretched out his arms.
Oh my God.
He was asleep all along.
Wow,
Just-
Kevin exclaimed to his mom as he ran down the stairs for breakfast. Wait till you hear about the dream I had last night.
Yes.
I can't
And
believe you
there-
just St. Elsewhere
I
to us.
can't believe you did it to us, man. I was right in that world with the elephants battling.
I don't think
Yeah.
we need that ending, Joe. I think we can cut that.
Yeah, cut the
I
ending.
know, I agree. I think it really kind of next time we can read my third grade epic, Totally Tubular Time Traveling Twins, where totally and tubular are spelled wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Bravo.
We definitely, Ryan, another thing for our list, we have to come back to Totally Tubular Time Traveling Twins
Mhm.
in a future episode. That is very, very important. Thumbs up from Ryan. I just want to say that here's to the imagination on Little Joe Starr.
That
I
was
actually
beautiful.
think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
Proof
here's
that I
to-
have always needed a head writer or an editor to fix my shit.
well,
No,
here's,
man.
here's
Spencer,
to,
you could have made that story awesome in second grade. I wish I had known you.
I am picturing
notes.
second grade Spencer and second grade Joe going over the
You want to
notes.
go in the back and break this?
So, confession, Joe, on Angie's adventures, what happens at the end is that so she goes obviously with Pegasus,
Obviously.
Unicorn Land, in the sky with the pink clouds. Because
Sure.
pink is okay. Anyway, at the end of it, she comes back and we're not sure if it really happened or not. And then she's on a school trip with her friends and to an art museum. And then we have a drawing because my friend illustrated for me. So a drawing of all these little kids pointing up at this picture, and it's of her with her Pegasus in Unicorn Land twist. It did happen. So we both had the
Oh.
dumb, the dumb third act
yeah.
twist.
Was there a trend of it was all a dream that happened when we were all kids? Because I know I wrote at least it was all a dream. It was all a dream stories. Was that like a thing that was happening?
Well,
used to read
mine
Word Up
wasn't so much that
magazine.
it was a dream as that it wasn't.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
real.
Oh man,
Yeah.
what's it? Reality versus fantasy, man. We were all locked in the 80s.
Yeah. And that actually brings us quite elegantly to Deb's Talks.
Divs
All right.
A show about a small man in an egg that can lift elephants.
You could in some universes, yeah.
In some universes, perhaps. So we are going to talk about this last season of Devs, including the finale. So 100% spoiler filled bullshit. If you do not want any of them spoilers, we'll see you next time. But sign up for Better Call Saul at 5:30 today because it's going to be awesome. Okay, so you've seen it, Spencer. I've seen
Yeah.
it. Danielle.
I've seen episodes. I haven't finished it.
And then
But
you don't like it, Joe.
But I might finish. I should leave.
Oh,
Or I'll just mute you guys and wave at me when I should unmute.
okay. I'll wave when you should come back. Danielle, are you good with spoilers? Or are you gonna?
Yeah, I'm good with spoilers. Good job.
Okay, whatever. Well, we're really going to be just talking about free will and like kind of the themes. I don't think that we have to delve too much into the plot points other than how they illustrate the themes. So
well, I guess it's like maybe it's worth saying like, what do we think happened at the end? Because it's not super clear what actually happens.
I don't agree even a little bit. I think it's 100% clear. You know?
Okay. Well, there you go then.
Oh, but this will be fun. Okay, so let's talk about two quick things and then let's talk about what happened at the end.
Yeah.
One is that both of our original theories came to fruition to some degree,
Yeah.
which is that Spencer, if I were to distill your theory, and correct me if I'm wrong, your theory basically operates on the premise around quantum physics, that an object there can be in two places at once until it's observed, and so it's living in this realm of possibility, right? But once you observe it, then that possibility the choice happens, and then that locks in consequentially it locks in what happened.
That future, that timeline.
That timeline, right?
Yeah.
So your theory about Devs was that by him observing his daughter, he was locking in her death.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. My original after episode 1 theory about Devs was that what they had discovered was that they were living in a simulation. And that because that they were living in a simulation, his interpretation of that was that free will didn't exist because everything that we were doing was a part of that simulation and was driven by that simulation, right? wasn't correct, but by the end of Devs, now he is in a simulation. And then the question of free will opens once again. So let's dive into the question of free will. The crux of it is that our main character made a choice when they didn't think she could.
Yes.
But the outcome was the same.
Right. Like throwing a rock into the middle of a river, you're changing things on a small scale, but on a long enough timeline, things do return. The water still flows in the direction it was going to flow.
Which is not unlike the film Sliding Doors, as you all know.
Totally. Yeah.
I love, there's a moment in Devs that is so full of tension in which the character, and forgive me, I can't remember her name, but in the show, his name.
Oh, his name, Forrest?
No, it's not Forrest. It's Forrest's friend. The actress is
Scott Pilgrim.
Alison Pill, no?
Not Alison Pill.
Alison Pill.
This isn't helpful to our Devs Talk at all. She's
Alison Pilgrim.
Sorry, I'm going to pull it up right now just because this is driving me crazy. Anyway, she has this moment where she's with Alison Pill, and Alison Pill basically tells her, now's the moment where you lean forward, and you do that as an act of scientific faith. That the multiverse exists, because you know that if the multiverse exists, then there are some timelines where you will live and some where you won't. And do you know the moment I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up. So the actress is Kaylee Spenny, and she's playing Lyndon in the show.
Lyndon.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And she says she falls so in love with this idea that because she finds it so elegant and perfect, that she does it. And to me, I felt that way about Devs. It was in the end such an elegant circle in terms of its themes, so incredibly well done, that it ultimately, I think, both of our theories were true, which is that, go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a great show, I think, because those ideas were embodied in the characters, that it didn't just feel like a bunch of people standing around just riffing on time and fate and stuff like that. They did a lot of that, but it always seemed motivated and coming from a personal place. Like Lyndon's kind of ego and sense of purpose was lost when they couldn't be part of the program anymore. So they would have a personal reason for believing that speech that they got also.
Yeah, but the interesting thing too about that moment was that it was clear that there weren't these, it felt clear to me that when they did the multiple versions of her falling, that there was no timeline in which she didn't fall and survive.
Yes. Well, that's what was so devious about
Katie. Alison Pill is Katie. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that she just was doing that because she knew it had to happen.
Yeah.
And was playing off that. That was murder. That was fully a murder.
It was 100% murder. And I think that both she and Nick Offerman's character, Forrest, had really absolved themselves of the guilt they had been feeling, right? Around the idea that they were committing murders, because they said there are these tracks and it has to happen and we're only playing our part, right? We have no free will.
Well, the interesting was Katie was more hands-on and getting her hands dirty. I thought it was interesting that Forrest always had, Kenton? Was that the security?
Kenton.
Yeah. He always had that's layers removed where he didn't have to be an actual part of the cruelty he was inflicting on everyone, that he could kind of, when he talked, it's that guy, sorry, these character names, it's been a couple weeks. Jamie, was that her ex-boyfriend?
Yeah.
And he's sitting outside the house talking to him. He's like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Oh, that's really rough. I think that was genuine in that moment. He really didn't realize or didn't want to think about all the pain he was inflicting on the world.
Well, and I think that's really interesting when you put him in his proper place as the head of a company, right? Yeah. And so that's a direct illustration, and I think so well written, that it's taking this small human moment where he's very, very directly been responsible for someone's suffering. And if you apply that to the distance that CEOs and heads of corporations allow themselves to have to the inevitable negative consequences of their decisions of their corporation, that's Forrest.
Yep.
And he doesn't take responsibility. However, Lily at the end, she makes a choice. They don't think she can. They truly believe she won't, but she does because she's so defiant. And and or like we really do have free will and we can make choices. However, there's limits to those choices. And that I think is one of the interesting themes about the show too, because it's a little bit tied to what's happening in Westworld. If you look at the circumstances of our lives, right? Like who our parents are, where we were born, what nationality we are, what gender we are, what we look like, every single aspect of our life creates a matrix of allowable choices. And as much as we think that there's infinite choice, and as much as we've been told that lie, particularly in the United States, there isn't, because there are structures in place that have been in place for many, many years that only allow us to stretch so far. Even when we are defiant, even when we are willing to rise up and push beyond that, there's only so far you really can push. And you will be then hindered by the limitations of who you are and your life circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah, totally. That's really, I haven't been watching Westworld this season. But I think that
it's much more on the nose than Devs.
Sure. Yeah. Devs is really about like the nitty gritty micro level of like, can you decide are you actually making any decision from something as trivial as like pushing a pen on a table or not? Like, is that up to you at all? Like, is anything truly in your power to change or not? And I think the show falls on the side of, no, you are completely, it does by its own rhetoric about like, no, you're completely on the train tracks. Everything is destined to happen. Even if you do make a choice, it's kind of futile, and the same thing is going to happen anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the opposite of the butterfly effect.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You kill the butterfly and it's fine. Things will sort themselves out. Yeah.
But it's a really weird, it's a conundrum, because had Katie and Forrest had the strength of will that Lily did, and they had chosen to act differently, could they have it? They'll never know if they could have actually impacted larger outcomes, right? That if they have made enough small choices differently, small and large, because Lily made a big choice. She either was going to commit murder or not. She chose not to. And the eventual outcome may be markedly different. It's like I forget who wrote the book about like 1%, like you make a 1% change, and then over time you keep making this 1% change, and then that cascades and has a larger effect. We'll never know if Katie had decided not to be a fucking murderer. Sorry, Ryan.
So
if that had had a material impact, a grander scale impact. I don't know.
Yeah, like if you are capable of these brief moments of actual free will, whatever that means, that could they come at the right time, even with your constricted choices that you're given? Could they make all the difference? Could they be a little tipping point that sends the universe off in an actual different direction? I don't know. I think that like most like 1,000-year-old philosophical problems, they're not easy to solve definitively one way or the other, and they're probably more of a confusion about the words we use rather than anything about reality itself. But this was as good of a dramatization of one as I've ever seen.
Me too. And to your point, Spencer, in terms of the limitation, like we're already, in terms of how we even think about things and construct outcomes for ourselves, limited by language, right? Like language is incredibly confining. There's only so much you can express. There's probably things that a lot of us feel, think, experience that we have no words to express and communicate and connect on, or kind of change, impact, have agency around, because we're limited, we're boxed in by language itself, which is why when people are grammar Nazis, I'm like, it's a fake construct anyway, get the fuck out of here. Sorry. Anyway, I'm excited because I really like the show. So let's talk about two things: what actually happened at the end of the show, and then next season. The interesting thing that I think is set up for next season for Katie.
Next season?
If there's another season, I don't know. There probably won't be. But the interesting thing to think about for the future of that character, Katie, is living with the fact that she could have made a choice and didn't. But two, so let's talk about where Forrest and Lily ended up, which is in the simulation.
They're inside Devs, right? Together, and their own little private universe that got set to right before the events of the story happened. Sorry, Danielle, spoilers. So they are, I wouldn't call it heaven, but it's like they get another chance to go through their lives, with a few things tweaked. Right. But they're not in reality, but they're in a perfect simulation of it.
But that's, I think, the point that they're trying to make. If it's indiscernible, then why does it matter? You know what I mean? They're actually in here's what I would say about where they end up. They're in a simulation, fake reality, and wherein they actually have more agency than they did in this reality, because they're conscious of it. And they know they're in a simulation, which means they know they can affect the simulation, which is where it gets a little matrixy.
Yeah.
Because once you wake up, that's when free will really comes in. Once you wake up to the limitations of free will and the constructs around it, then you can really make choices. So if I know that I can only go in one of three directions, now I can make a real decision, right?
Yeah, I'm just sorry, my brain just broke because I'm realizing, so if they're in a simulation, and in that simulation exists devs and the whole program the way it is in the real world, there's a simulation inside that. And inside that simulation, there's another simulation, and it's turtles all the way down.
Right, which is why a lot of people think that we're in a simulation now, because we've talked about this before, but the basic premise, and I'm not a scientist, so this is going to be very reductive, and forgive me, of the simulation theory is that in a future in which humanity continues to evolve, it will evolve to a point in which we have simulations that are indiscernible from reality. Once we get to that point, there will be billions of simulations active. And so the probability is that you're in a simulation. So there's 2 points. The high probability is that you're either in a simulation once we get to that point, or we don't get to that point. And that means something catastrophic happened to prevent.
So I hope we get to that point.
So I hope we're in a simulation, I guess. And there's lots of evidence that we are. So in terms of the end, the other thing Caleb, my boyfriend, and I were talking about with the end was that, he mentioned that they're in this simulation, the part of like the multiverse is real, and that's why devs works, right? Which means that free will is real, because in order for the multiverse, brings us back to the point about incremental choices having larger results. In order for the multiverse to be real, that has to be true, which is that free will is real and incremental tiny changes have over time a large impact, which is why there's infinite universes, because there's infinite choice, which means that free will is both real and not real. Two, is that this is what I wasn't sure about. If there's infinite versions of them and they're all in these infinite realities and one of them just got stuck in the hell-like reality, or if there's only one version of them and they have to now, because they're conscious, experience all those realities.
What?
So remember when he's telling her, like, hey, remember when he's telling her, hey, we're the lucky ones. We're basically in this paradise-like reality.
Yeah.
But I thought that being conscious would help for those other harsher, the ones that feel more like hell, right?
Yeah.
So what I couldn't tell was like, so is that just another version of them that got stuck in the hell reality? Or is there one, like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, right?
I don't know which is worse. It feels better to have one version that gets to experience it all than to have someone just stuck in the hell.
Yeah, but it's better to not know it. If you're in hell, it's better to not know that there's a paradise just out of reach.
But they will know because they're all conscious of where they are.
Oh, I thought if you were in hell, they weren't conscious of the version they were in. No, they are.
Let us know in the comments. I think what he said was that he made sure that they were conscious because for the ones that had to experience the hell, he thought that would be some small comfort.
Wow. Bummer.
Yeah. Hardcore bummer.
Yeah. Oof. It's a dark show.
It's so good. Final thoughts on death, or I don't know. You don't have to do final thoughts, but.
And it's just better for your psyche to go through life pretending you have free will. You really don't gain anything by pretending it doesn't exist. So, but again, saying that you were destined to believe that or not, no matter what I say. So live your life.
I kind of adhere to what I believe the show is saying, which is that it both exists and has limits. So I think the more conscious we are of our actual, what those limits are, without making yourself a victim or, whatever, I think the happier you'll be, because I think sometimes we expect things of ourselves that aren't possible.
Yeah. And So final philosophical thoughts. I think that the two things are compatible, that you can have a completely material universe that's all little atoms and chemicals ping pong balling around that you could predict, but you could describe those same actions as free will or making a choice. And they're just two different ways of describing the same thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. Enjoy.
That was a fun talk. We now have to go do like this super like bullet pointed team meeting thing. I have to go talk about bullet points. All right. Prepare. But you know what? Those are the tracks I'm on.
Yeah.
And these are the tracks that you guys are on. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you stuck around for Devs Talk and that you enjoyed Devs. Thank you, Danielle, for sticking with us through all of that.
No, it's good. I don't mind spoilers. I'm one of those people where like it's about how you get there. It's not about knowing the thing.
I agree. I'm a monster and read the last page of novels. Joe Starr.
The only TV I watch now is just reruns of the $6 Million Man. If you guys ever want to talk about it.
That's the end of the show.
All right.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.